Welcome to the Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. Todd has over 35 years of experience working with thousands of couples as a licensed therapist in his private practice. Todd shares his insights on this show. It's never too early to divorce-proof your marriage or too late to heal yourselves and have the relationship you truly want.
Hi, this is Todd Creager. I'm wanting to talk with you about a successful couple who healed from infidelity. Actual couple I've worked with. Their names are Jennifer and Michael, but not really. But that's their names for the listeners to protect their confidentiality. In this particular situation, Jennifer and Michael have been married for about 8 years, and they had 2 little kids. And Michael is very, very confident in himself, and he's done really well in his business that he works for, and he has his own side business as well. Jennifer has been the stay-at-home mom. Jennifer grew up in a home where she had to be the responsible one. She had a very critical mother, and she also had to be the one responsible for her younger siblings and an absent dad. So she had her abandonment issues. And, this is something that we need to look at when we have partners who have betrayed, because it might figure into the dynamics. But like I always I have to say this almost every time I do this, that he was the one that cheated, and it was his 100% responsibility for that choice. But we also want both people to take a look at their own issues, what they've learned when they were younger. In her case, she learned how to be responsible and good and in control. He was pretty indulged as a child. He could do no wrong in his mother's eyes, which gives birth to oftentimes narcissistic traits. He doesn't necessarily mean he had narcissistic personality disorder, which is out there, but there's many more people that have narcissistic traits than those that have the personality disorder. You could work with people with personality disorder, but it's a lot easier to work with people with narcissistic traits. That basically means that sometimes they get so caught up in trying to prove how good they are that they may not be as empathic and caring and understanding to others. When a man like him who's out there trying to prove how wonderful he is, in a way, like I said, his mom always treated him like he was, so he was always trying to live up to it. And he's a good-looking guy. He was successful. He was popular in school. He did all right there, and in business, and he gets a lot of positive responses from men and women. But he's dealing with those positive responses. So you have a man who likes to get gratified with, like, hey, you're good, and attention and a pat on the back. And then you have a wife who's at home with 2 kids who is responsible, definitely not a wild and crazy kind of person. And after a while, this is a man who wanted to go prove that he still got it. And it's a very ego-driven infidelity factor there. And so when they came to see me, she had discovered that he had been cheating on her, and he also had a gambling issue too. But even that, I think, was his way of, of course, having fun, but it's also trying to be great, trying to make a lot of money. So he was very caught up in, like, look at me, look how great I am. And yet, what I learned about him, which is good news, is that he had the capacity for awareness and for insight, and recognized that he can be that way, and that how much he had hurt his wife. And of course, ultimately his kids, because, I've said this all the time, being married, or even when people are getting divorced, if they hurt their partner or ex-partner, they can't not hurt their kids. And he really loves his kids. And, we talked about that he needs to make a decision about how he wants to live his life. Does he want to live his life gratifying his ego all the time? Because there's always going to be people out there that could do that. Your wife that's at home changing diapers may not be the one to do that all the time. And we'll get to her in a minute, because there were things that we wanted to work on with her. but just staying with Michael, he needed to recognize that he's got to learn how his need to be gratified and to be told how wonderful he is may not always be fulfilled at home when his wife is dealing with some of the mundane issues of life, and sometimes he can be stressed and busy. And so he needed to be aware of it and learn how to recognize these feelings and even the urges that are poor solutions to those feelings. They're poor solutions because they lead to something he didn't really want. He did not want the family to break up. So they had conversations in my presence and then in between doing homework about this part of him. And he was able to talk openly about it. And I thought that was really great that he could talk openly about it. And Jennifer was able to listen and understand. But he did have a hard time listening to her at first when she would express all her pain about the betrayal. He had a very hard time accepting that she was upset with him, and he would get angry at her. But underneath the anger, there was always this kind of panicky feeling, like, I need you to like me. And he had to learn how to soothe that part of him. And the more he learned to soothe that part of him, the more he allowed her to have her anger and her hurt and her pain about the betrayal, which goes away in a process, not on his timetable. So with her, we also at the same time said that even though she is 0% responsibility for his choices, that maybe she needs to work on her parts of her as well. I mean, we all do. If we're smart about it, we realize we all are here to work on ourselves, and that we have all learned some patterns unconsciously that may not be that great. That there's a playful, fun-loving side to her that had been suppressed, and also having such a critical mother that she oftentimes held herself back there as well. So she had a hard time being playful and open and vulnerable and even appreciative, which is the very thing he needed. So as we worked on him to be more mature and adult and not just think of his own ego gratification, we helped her to become, kind of metaphorically let her hair down and be more vulnerable and be more appreciative and focus on the things that were working rather than the things that weren't working. And of course, he made it harder for her, because when there's infidelity, then the other person oftentimes is looking for, they don't want to be the fool again. So she already grew up being fear-filled with an overly responsible job as a child that she shouldn't have had, as well as a critical mother. So of course, getting betrayed led her to have more protection. So we had to work with her to recognize his growth, that he became a good bet. And he demonstrated it, where he was able to not gamble. He definitely was able to not cheat. He was able to bring his frustrations and angers and needs and vulnerabilities to her. And she was able to listen and practice being more playful and being more silly. And she did. And they learned how to do that. And she would initiate not just sex more, but initiate playing more. And again, this happened in a way that made sense and that honored her fears and her pain. And she opened up slowly, but as she opened up, it was good for her and good for him. So that was a wonderful, successful case. And I wanted you to know about that. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe.
That's it for today's episode of Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. For free resources and materials, head over to toddcreager.com. Loved this episode? Head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.